Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The air was red of smoldering metal and incense, a suffocating blend of ritual and brutality. The circular chamber glowed with the dull orange of heated iron, the symbols of ownership still sizzling into flesh. The girl knelt on the cold stone floor, her turquoise skin slick with sweat, silver hair clinging to her face as she bit down the cry threatening to escape. The pain burned through her spine, a sickening reminder of what she had become, marked, claimed, and no longer her own. The elder enforcer loomed over her, his armored form an unmovable shadow in the flickering light. "You are property now, Issa," he intoned, voice cold as the void. "Serve well or suffer the consequences." Her trembling hands clenched into fists. She had always known her people to be ruthless in their laws, but the weight of the brand against her skin made it real. There was no mercy for those who defied the purity mandates. A single mistake, a single glance too long at an offworlder, and now she was less than a person, a thing to be owned. Not if she could help it. When the temple doors flared open, she seized the moment. The enforcer turned, attention flicking to the robed figure entering the chamber. Issa moved, her body fueled by agony and desperation. She lunged forward, twisted beneath his reach, her feet striking the ground with purpose, and in one breathless instant she was free of his grasp. Shouts echoed through the stone corridors, but she was already running. She didn't know where she was going. The city outside was a labyrinth of towering archways and narrow alleys bathed in the blue glow of shifting energy currents. The sky above was choked with vessels, their silhouettes cutting through the perpetual dusk of her home world. Somewhere beyond them, beyond the reach of her captors, lay freedom. The world blurred around her as she pushed forward, her body protesting every step, the pain of her brand sending jolts of fire down her spine. She had to get off this planet. Somewhere among the offworlders who walked the lower districts, there would be a way, a ship, a smuggler, anyone who could take her beyond the reach of those who now owned her. A sudden flash of motion, a patrol drone whirring overhead. She ducked into the shadows of a transport dock, pressing herself against the cold metal of a supply crate. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The scent of rusted steel and industrial oils filled her lungs, mingling with the sharp tang of fear. Then she heard voices, not the guttural commands of enforcers, but something rougher edged with an unfamiliar accent. Human. Issa barely understood their language, only fragments pulled from overheard conversations in the trade sectors, but she knew enough. Humans were different, lawless, unpredictable, dangerous in ways her people could never be. Yet right now, danger was preferable to certainty. Slowly, she edged toward the source of the voices. Beyond the crates, a human man stood beside a transport vessel, his dark clothing layered with dust, his stance relaxed yet alert. He was speaking to another human, gesturing toward the cargo bay, unaware of the fugitive watching from the shadows. Issa hesitated. Trusting a human was reckless, but what choice did she have? She stepped forward. The moment his gaze snapped to hers, she knew she had made a mistake. His eyes narrowed, his body tensing, instinctively recognizing a problem before he even understood what he was looking at. "Help me," she said, her voice raw. She doubted he understood her language, but desperation bled through her tone. "Please." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then he moved, not toward her but toward the ship, his expression unreadable. "Get inside," he said. She didn't hesitate. As soon as the door sealed behind her, her legs buckled. The ship's interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of machinery and something unfamiliar, something warm, human. She pressed a hand against her ribs, struggling to stay upright as adrenaline wore off. A voice came from behind her. "What the hell did you get yourself into?" She turned, finding the human watching her with guarded curiosity. He was taller than she expected, his build solid, his presence unnervingly calm despite the chaos she had just dragged into his world. She lifted the edge of her clothing, revealing the still-raw brand seared into her skin, the symbol of servitude, a death sentence if she was caught. His jaw tightened. "Fuck," he muttered. For the first time since her escape, she felt something other than fear, hope. The ship trembled as it lifted from the docking bay, engines roaring against the pull of gravity. Issa clutched the metal railing, her breath unsteady as her body fought exhaustion. The pain from the brand still radiated through her nerves, a constant reminder of what she had escaped. The human stood at the controls, his hands moving with practiced ease, adjusting switches and monitors. She watched him carefully, her body coiled tight, ready to react. She had thrown herself into the unknown, into the mercy of a species her own called primitive, and yet she was still alive. The human glanced at her, his gaze flicking over her form, assessing. "You hurt." His voice was deep, rough, carrying none of the cold detachment of her own kind. Issa hesitated before nodding. "I will survive." The human exhaled through his nose, something unreadable flashing across his face. He stepped toward a storage compartment, pulling out a container with a sharp motion. He tossed it onto the table near her. "Medkit, use it." She stared at the box, then back at him. "You trust me with this?" A dry, humorless chuckle. "Not really, but if you drop dead, that's a problem for me." Issa didn't know if that was a joke. Humans were strange, too open, too unpredictable. But she didn't have the luxury of questioning motives. Her fingers fumbled over the box's unfamiliar latches, her body trembling as she pulled it open. Inside, rows of compact medical supplies glowed under the dim ship lights. The scent of sterile antiseptic filled the air as she retrieved a vial of liquid. Carefully, she unfastened the fabric over her shoulder, exposing the swollen, angry flesh of the brand. She didn't flinch as she poured the liquid over the wound. The sting was nothing compared to what had already been done to her. The human watched in silence. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated. Her true name was already erased, reduced to a record in the hands of her pursuers. "Issa." Something about speaking it aloud felt like reclaiming it, a sliver of defiance. The human nodded slightly. "Galen." She committed it to memory. Names had power, and this man, whether she liked it or not, had just become the only thing standing between her and death. The ship jolted slightly, the atmosphere outside shifting as they entered the void. Issa let out a slow breath, her muscles aching from the tension she hadn't realized she was holding. She was off-world, free, for now, her hands curled into fists. "They will come after me." Galen leaned against the console, arms crossed. "Who?" "My people. They do not allow those like me to escape." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" Issa hesitated. How much could she tell him? She touched the mark on her shoulder, her fingers tracing the raised flesh. "I am impure in their eyes. I was meant to be given away. When I ran, I became property, stolen, not lost." Her voice lowered. "They will not stop until they reclaim me or kill me." Silence stretched between them. Galen's gaze flicked to the controls, his expression unreadable. "How far will they go?" Issa exhaled slowly. "If I am found with you, they will brand you too, or worse." She expected him to react, to hesitate, to consider throwing her off his ship before she became his problem. Instead, he ran a hand down his face and sighed. "Figures." Her brow furrowed. "You do not fear them." A dry smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I don't scare easy." The words were spoken with confidence, but she had seen what her people did to those who defied them. Strength meant nothing against the weight of an empire. She shifted slightly, wrapping her arms around herself. "You should not have helped me." "Probably." His lack of concern unsettled her. Issa turned her gaze to the viewport, watching the distant lights of the city fade behind them. The stars stretched endlessly, a sea of darkness that both terrified and fascinated her. She had never been this far from home. She had never been this alone. A deep ache settled in her chest, something she refused to name. "You got a plan?" Galen's voice pulled her from her thoughts. She glanced at him. "Survive." "Not much of a plan." She exhaled. "You would prefer I lie." Galen let out a quiet chuckle. "No, I prefer you tell me what kind of trouble I just signed up for." Her fingers tightened against her arms. "If they find me, they will not stop at me. You will be seen as a traitor for helping me." Galen didn't look fazed. If anything, he seemed almost amused. "Good thing I don't have a reputation to ruin." Issa studied him carefully. His features were rougher than her own kind, less symmetrical, less polished, and yet there was something undeniably strong in them. He was nothing like the ones who had branded her. She swallowed hard. "Why did you help me?" He held her gaze for a long moment before shrugging. Seemed like the right thing to do. She didn't understand that answer. Her people did nothing unless it benefited them. No one risked themselves for a stranger, and yet here she was. She lowered her gaze. "I do not know how to repay this." Galen sighed. "You don't owe me anything." That too was strange. Issa closed her eyes for a moment, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. The pain, the fear, the uncertainty, it all weighed down on her. She needed rest, but her body refused to relax. Galen shifted, pushing away from the console. "Get some sleep. We'll talk when you're not about to pass out." She hesitated. "You do not trust me." "Not yet." Issa didn't blame him. She forced herself to stand, her movements stiff as she stepped toward the small sleeping compartment at the side of the ship. The space was unfamiliar, but it was hers for now, a temporary refuge. She turned back to Galen, watching as he leaned against the console, his expression unreadable. Her people would call him a fool, but right now, he was the only one standing between her and the fate she had barely escaped. For the first time in her life, she would have to trust a human and pray that he would not betray her. The silence of the ship felt heavier now, pressing against her as she lay in the unfamiliar cot. The hum of the engines thrummed beneath her, steady and constant, but her mind refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the brand searing into her skin, smelled the acrid scent of burnt flesh, heard the voices of those who decided her fate without her consent. Issa's fingers traced over the raised scar, her breath shallow. It would never fade, never let her forget what had been stolen from her. Freedom was a fleeting illusion. Even now, with metal walls shielding her from her pursuers, she felt the weight of their chains. Her kind did not forgive. The ship jolted slightly as it adjusted course, and she tensed on instinct before forcing herself to relax. She was too used to being caged, to waiting for the next blow to come, but she was here alive, not back in their grasp. She had to remind herself of that. A knock against the metal frame of the doorway made her sit up sharply. Galen leaned against it, arms crossed, his dark eyes assessing. "You're still awake." She didn't answer. He sighed, stepping inside without invitation. He wasn't close enough to threaten, but his presence filled the small space. "Look, I get it. You're not exactly in a position to trust anyone, but if you don't sleep, you're going to collapse, and I'm not carrying you." Issa tilted her head slightly. "I did not ask you to." Galen gave a short, dry laugh, shaking his head. "You don't ask for much of anything, do you?" She narrowed her eyes. "My people do not ask. We take what is given or suffer the consequences." He frowned at that, something shifting in his expression. "That why you ran?" She swallowed. The answer sat on the tip of her tongue, but saying it aloud would make it real. Instead, she looked away. A heavy silence stretched between them before Galen let out a slow exhale. "Fine. Keep your secrets, but I need to know one thing. How long before they catch up to us?" Issa considered that. The ship she had escaped from was advanced, capable of scanning entire planetary systems for anomalies. If they truly wanted her back, they wouldn't stop. She met his gaze. "Not long." He muttered something under his breath before rubbing his jaw. "Figures." There was no fear in him, just irritation, as if he had been expecting bad news all along. "Then we make it difficult for them," he said, more to himself than to her. Issa frowned. "You are willing to fight." Galen let out a dry chuckle. "Oh, I don't plan on getting caught, sweetheart." The term caught her off guard. No one had ever addressed her so casually before. It wasn't mocking, but it held a weight of familiarity that she didn't understand. She frowned. "I am not your sweetheart." Galen smirked. "Noted." Issa studied him carefully. He was unlike anyone she had met before. Humans were not known for their restraint, for their patience, yet this man exuded both. And still, there was an undercurrent of something sharper beneath his composure, something dangerous. "You have dealt with my kind before," she observed. His expression didn't change, once or twice. That wasn't an answer, but she didn't press. He turned toward the doorway, pausing briefly. "Get some rest. We'll figure things out tomorrow." She watched him leave, the door hissing shut behind him. Issa stared at the ceiling, willing her body to relax. Sleep did not come easily. When she woke, the ship felt different, not in any physical sense. The hum of the engines remained steady, the air still carried the sterile scent of recycled oxygen, but something had shifted. Issa sat up, her limbs stiff. The faintest whisper of unease prickled at the edges of her awareness. She rose, moving silently toward the main cabin where she found Galen hunched over the console, eyes scanning rapidly over data streams. "Trouble?" she asked. He didn't glance up. "Nothing yet, but your people are looking." Her stomach tightened. "How do you know?" Intercepted a few coded transmissions. They're searching sector by sector, keeping it quiet. Issa's breath slowed. This was what she expected. The hunt had begun. She stepped closer. "What will you do?" Galen leaned back, rubbing a hand down his face. "Well, first I was going to have breakfast, then I was going to come up with a plan." She blinked. "You joke." "Helps me think." Issa didn't understand humans. There was no fear in him, no urgency despite the danger closing in. Did he not comprehend the severity of the situation, or was this how his kind survived? By pretending the world wasn't on fire around them. Galen turned to her, his gaze sharp now. "We need to stay ahead of them. Your people, how good are their tracking systems?" She hesitated. "If they have my genetic code, they can scan planets for my presence." He muttered a curse. "That's not ideal." Issa folded her arms. "I told you this was dangerous." Yeah, I heard you the first time." He exhaled, thinking. "All right, we need a way to scramble your signature, something to make their scans useless." Issa considered that. "There is a way." Galen arched a brow. "That was fast." She met his gaze. "It is not pleasant." He smirked, figured. A part of her hesitated. The method was extreme, but if it worked, it would buy them time. She took a steady breath. "We need to alter my biology temporarily. There are compounds that can disrupt genetic markers, force my cells to become unreadable for a time." Galen frowned. "And where exactly do we get this miracle drug?" She exhaled. "Black markets, fringe worlds, it is not something legal." He sighed. "Great, so now we're running from your people and making shady deals with criminals." He paused. "Do you regret helping me?" Galen looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "No, just wish you were a little less high maintenance." Issa wasn't sure if he was joking. He turned back to the console. "All right, I know a guy who might have what we need, but we'll have to get there fast before your people catch wind of where we're headed." She nodded, understood. Galen eyed her. "You sure about this? The stuff you're talking about, it's not exactly safe." "Neither is being caught." He held her gaze for a beat longer, then sighed. "All right, let's do this." As he adjusted their course, Issa let out a slow breath. This was only the beginning. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them, a steady reminder that they were still in motion, still running. Galen's fingers danced over the console, adjusting the trajectory, making quick calculations. He barely looked at her, but Issa could feel his awareness, sharp, measured, assessing. She studied him in return. Humans were an anomaly to her kind, too unpredictable, too emotional. They were reckless and stubborn, but there was something else beneath their impulsivity, a relentless drive, a refusal to bow even when the odds were against them. Galen embodied that contradiction. "Tell me about this contact," she said finally. He didn't glance up. "Name's Vex, runs with a group that specializes in the kind of stuff we need. Not exactly friendly, but if the price is right, he doesn't ask questions." Issa narrowed her eyes. "You trust him?" A dry chuckle. "Hell no." That didn't reassure her. Galen leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms. "Vex and I have history. Nothing good, nothing bad, just business." "Business," she echoed. His lips quirked. "That a problem?" She considered that. Trust was not something given lightly among her kind. Alliances were built on necessity, not loyalty, and yet she had no choice but to follow his lead for now. "No." Galen smirked. "Good to know." The ship jolted slightly as it exited FTL, the sudden shift making Issa tense. Her fingers curled against her palm before she forced them to relax. Outside the viewport, a station loomed against the vast stretch of space. It was old, patched together from mismatched metals, the kind of place where law was more of a suggestion than a rule. Galen powered down the engines. "Welcome to Haven Outpost. Try not to get yourself killed." Issa arched a brow. "I should say the same to you." His grin widened. "I like you." She wasn't sure how to respond to that. The docking sequence engaged, metal clamps securing their ship into place. Galen pushed up from his seat, rolling his shoulders before glancing at her. "Stay close. Don't talk unless you have to." "I am not a child." His smirk softened, something almost teasing in his gaze. "Didn't say you were." She huffed but followed as he led the way down the ramp. The air inside the outpost was thick with the scent of oil, sweat, and something acrid she didn't recognize. Beings of all kinds moved through the crowded walkways, humans, cyborgs, creatures she had only seen in records. Some watched them with interest, others with suspicion. Issa straightened her posture, her movements measured. She had spent too much of her life among predators to make the mistake of appearing weak. Galen's stride was easy, confident, as if he belonged here. He didn't flinch at the stares or the occasional sneer thrown their way. They wound through the narrow corridors until they reached a dimly lit alcove. A man lounged against the wall, a cybernetic implant covering half his face. His one organic eye flicked up, scanning them with amusement. Well, if it isn't Galen." Vex pushed off the wall, grinning. "Didn't think I'd see you again. Figured someone would have put a hole in your head by now." Galen smirked, disappointed. Vex chuckled a little, then his gaze slid to Issa. His expression shifted, something sharper lurking beneath his amusement. "And who's this?" "She's the one in need of your expertise," Galen said. Vex tilted his head. "That's so." Issa met his gaze without flinching. "You have what I need or not." Vex laughed. "Straight to business, I like that." Galen stepped closer. "Do you have it or not?" Vex's grin didn't falter, but there was an edge to it now. "Depends. This kind of thing isn't exactly easy to come by, and it sure as hell ain't cheap." "I can pay," Issa said. Vex's gaze lingered on her before he nodded toward a side door. "Then let's talk." Galen shot her a look before following. The room beyond was small, cluttered with scattered data pads and old equipment. Vex dropped into a chair, kicking his boots up onto the table. "All right," he said. "You're looking for a genetic disruptor. That tells me two things. One, you're running from someone real bad, and two, you're desperate enough to put something dangerous into your system." Issa didn't respond. Vex smirked. "You're not the talkative type, huh?" Galen crossed his arms. "Can you get it or not?" Vex studied them for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, I can get it, but like I said, it's not cheap." Issa reached into her coat, pulling out a small chip. She slid it across the table. Vex picked it up, whistling. "Well, damn, you must really want to disappear." She held his gaze. "I do." Vex twirled the chip between his fingers before tucking it into his pocket. "All right, I'll have it ready by tomorrow, but be careful with this stuff. It'll screw with your body in ways you won't like." "I can handle it." Vex chuckled. "Suit yourself." Galen exhaled. "We'll be back tomorrow." Vex waved them off, looking forward to it. They stepped out into the main corridor, the noise of the outpost swallowing them again. Galen glanced at her. "You sure about this?" She met his gaze. "Do I have a choice?" His jaw tightened. "There's always a choice." She wasn't sure she believed that, but for now, this was the only path forward. The air in the outpost felt heavier than before, thick with the weight of too many eyes watching, too many ears listening. Issa's steps were measured, precise, as she and Galen moved away from Vex's hideout. She could feel the tension in Galen's posture, the subtle way his muscles coiled ready to react at a moment's notice. They were being followed. She didn't turn her head to look. That would only confirm suspicion. Instead, she relied on the finely tuned instincts that had kept her alive this long. The quiet shuffling of boots 3 paces behind them, the pause when they slowed, the way the background noise never quite masked the presence at their backs. Galen muttered under his breath, 2 of them right side. She nodded subtly. They kept walking. The outpost corridors twisted in unnatural ways, built layer upon layer with no clear design. That was their advantage. If they could slip through the maze, they might lose their unwanted company. But the moment they turned a corner, another figure blocked their path. A woman with deep scars along her jaw, her arms crossed over her chest. She wasn't heavily armed, but that didn't mean she wasn't dangerous. Issa sighed. Friends of yours? Galen's smirk didn't reach his eyes. Not exactly. The woman tilted her head. Been a long time, Galen. Not long enough, apparently. She chuckled. You've still got that mouth on you. I was hoping you'd finally learn to shut up. Disappointed. Not yet. The 2 behind them stepped closer, hemming them in. Issa's hand itched for her weapon, but she held back. Violence wasn't always the answer, at least not immediately. The woman's gaze slid to Issa, assessing. He always did find interesting company. Issa didn't blink, and you are. The woman smiled. Name's Vaughn, and I think you have something I want. Galen sighed dramatically. Can we skip to the part where you tell us what that is, or do you want to keep circling? Vaughn laughed. You're in a hurry, that's new. Galen's patience was thinning. What do you want, Vaughn? She tapped her fingers against her hip, eyes sharp. Word is you just made a deal with Vex. I want to know what you're buying. Issa felt the subtle shift in Galen's stance. Tension. This was dangerous. You know better than to ask that, Galen said.